The sea is heavy. For every 10 meters you descend, another atmosphere of pressure bears down upon you. Down in the Bathypelagic zone, the weight of the water is enough to crush steel like tinfoil. We assume that such an environment is hostile to life, but the archive tells a different story. The pressure does not destroy life, it forces it to adapt. And in the dark, without the constraints of gravity or sunlight, life does not just survive, it grows. Welcome to Chapter 2 of the Aquatic Abyss. Here we leave the human-sized horrors behind and descend into the realm of the Leviathan, the monsters that do not hunt us, because to them, we are not even a meal. We are merely dust falling through the water column. The concept of the Leviathan begins in the oldest texts of human history. In the book of Job, God speaks from the whirlwind, demanding to know if man can draw out Leviathan with a fishhook. The description is not of a mere animal, but of a geological force. His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the dawn. This was a creature whose very movement made the deep boil like a pot. The ancients understood something fundamental about the ocean. It is a place of disproportionate scale, a world where a single organism can eclipse the size of a human settlement. The Leviathan wasn't just a sea monster, it was the embodiment of chaos, the untamed primordial soup that existed before God ordered the light. In the ancient Hebrew cosmology, the Leviathan was so massive that if it were to eat, it required the entire output of the Jordan River just to wet its throat. It was the apex of God's physical creation, a creature so terrifying that only its creator could tame it. To the people of the desert, who relied on small, manageable wells and rivers, the concept of a boundless, chaotic ocean was terrifying enough. But an ocean inhabited by a serpent that could swallow the horizon, that was a theological nightmare. The Leviathan represented the ultimate limits of human agency. It was the boundary line where human mastery of the earth ended and the absolute, terrifying sovereignty of nature began. It was a biological deity of the abyss. While the desert cultures feared the chaos of the deep, the seafaring Norse faced a much more practical terror. They spoke of the Hafgufa, the mother of all sea monsters. According to the 13th century saga Orvar Odra, the Hafgufa was so large that it disguised itself as an island. Sailors, weary from weeks on the freezing North Atlantic, would see what appeared to be land. They would anchor their ships, disembark, and light fires. Only when the heat penetrated the thick, leathery hide of the beast would the island begin to sink. The Hafgufa didn't hunt actively, it didn't need to. It simply opened its massive jaws, expelled a sweet-smelling bait, and waited for the ocean's currents to fill its mouth with fish, whales, and the occasional ship. The horror of the Hafgufa, and later the Kraken, was the horror of scale. A creature so large that it defied human perception. You couldn't fight it with a sword or a spear because you couldn't even see the whole animal. You were fighting a landscape. You were fighting the geography of the ocean itself. This is the profound psychological terror of deep-sea gigantism. We are terrestrial mammals. Our brains are hardwired to understand predators like wolves or bears, creatures that are roughly our size, creatures we can look in the eye. But how do you comprehend a predator whose eye is the size of a dinner plate, whose tentacles are as thick as ancient oak trees? The Norse sailors knew that out in the deep water, they were completely at the mercy of biology. By the 16th century, the myth of the Kraken began to solidify on the maps of Europe. The Carta Marina, drawn by Olaus Magnus in 1539, is crawling with leviathans, giant lobsters, massive sea serpents, and monstrous squid wrapping their limbs around the masts of galleons. Olaus Magnus was a Catholic priest, but his map was treated as a scientific document. The monsters weren't just decorative, they were warnings. They were drawn in the specific waters where ships had vanished without a trace. In the age of sail, the ocean was a black box. A ship would leave port and simply cease to exist. The Kraken became the necessary explanation for the unexplainable. It was the face we put on the cold, indifferent physics of a storm or a rogue wave. The sailors of the Age of Sail lived in absolute terror of the calm. In a storm, you fought the wind. But in the dead calm, when the sails hung limp and the sea was like dark glass, that was when the Kraken would rise. The legend dictated that the danger wasn't just the tentacles crushing the hull. The true danger was the whirlpool created when the massive creature decided to sink back down to the abyss. It didn't need to bite you, it just needed to go home, and it would drag the ocean surface down with it. It is a brilliant, horrifying metaphor for the sea itself, a force that kills you not out of malice, but simply by existing, by moving, by breathing. But the archive knows that myths do not materialize out of thin air. They are shadows cast by a biological reality. For centuries, the scientific community dismissed the Kraken as the drunken ravings of superstitious sailors. Science requires a specimen. Science requires proof. And the deep ocean is exceptionally good at hiding its dead. When a creature of the abyss dies, it doesn't float. It sinks, becoming a feast for the scavengers of the benthic zone. But occasionally, the ocean makes a mistake. Occasionally, the abyss spits something back up. And in the 19th century, the myth washed ashore. The transition from folklore to biology was about to begin, and the reality was far more disturbing than the old sailors' tales. In 1857, the Danish zoologist Japetus Steenstrup examined a massive cephalopod beak that had washed up on a beach. He realized it belonged to an animal of unfathomable size, and he named it Architeuthis dux, the ruling squid, the giant squid. Suddenly, the Kraken wasn't a myth. It was an invertebrate. It had a beak that could bite through bone, and eyes the size of basketballs to capture the faintest glimmers of bioluminescence in the eternal dark. It was a predator perfectly engineered for a world without light. But even with Steenstrup's classification, the giant squid remained a ghost. For over a century, scientists only knew it from rotting carcasses and severed tentacles found in the bellies of sperm whales. It was a creature defined by its fragments. The true scale of the giant squid wasn't found in a laboratory. It was found on the skin of the sperm whale. Whalers in the 19th and 20th centuries would haul these massive mammals aboard, only to find them covered in circular scars, some as large as dinner plates. These were the battle wounds of the abyss. Two apex predators locked in a silent, violent struggle in the crushing darkness 2 miles beneath the surface. The sperm whale uses echolocation to hunt the squid, while the squid uses its massive, razor-toothed suckers to fight for its life. The archive holds no video of these battles, only the aftermath written on the flesh of the survivors. It is a hidden war, fought every day in a realm we cannot reach. Yet, even the giant squid is dwarfed by the true monarch of the Antarctic ice. Enter Messonychoteuthis hamiltoni, the colossal squid. If the giant squid is the stuff of nightmares, the colossal squid is the stuff of madness. It is shorter, but massively heavier, built like a biological tank to survive the freezing, crushing depths of the Southern Ocean. We didn't even know it existed until 1925, and we didn't find an intact specimen until 2003. This is a creature that can weigh over 1,000 pounds, armed with the largest eyes in the animal kingdom. But the true horror of the colossal squid isn't its size. It's the weaponry it carries on its tentacles. Nature did not equip it with mere suckers. Nature gave it something far worse. The colossal squid does not just have suckers. Its tentacles are lined with swiveling, razor-sharp hooks. Some have 3 points, designed to dig deep into the flesh of a whale and never let go. When it strikes, it doesn't just hold its prey, it shreds it. Imagine a creature the size of a bus, armed with hundreds of surgical scalpels, hunting in absolute darkness. It is a masterpiece of evolutionary horror, and the terrifying truth is, we have only seen the juveniles. The beaks found in the stomachs of the largest sperm whales suggest that there are colossal squids out there that are much, much larger than anything we have ever hauled onto a boat. We are merely skimming the surface of a very deep, very violent ecosystem. Why does the deep breed such monsters? The biological rule is known as deep-sea gigantism. In the freezing temperatures and immense pressure of the abyss, metabolic rates plummet. Creatures live longer, grow slower, and simply do not stop expanding. Isopods that are the size of a fingernail on land become armored scavengers the size of a dog in the deep. Squids become titans. The ocean removes the physical limits that gravity imposes on land animals. Without bones needing to support weight against the earth, flesh can expand indefinitely. The deep ocean is a factory for giants. It is an environment that rewards immense size with thermal efficiency and predatory dominance. It is a world that naturally produces the Leviathans we once thought were only myths. This brings us to the ghosts of the prehistoric. We look at the great white shark and tremble, but the archive remembers the megalodon, a shark the size of a commercial airliner with teeth as large as a human hand. We look at crocodiles, but the earth remembers the mosasaur, a marine reptile that ruled the Cretaceous seas. Science tells us that these apex predators are extinct, victims of changing climates and shifting food chains. But the human mind is not easily convinced by fossils. We look at the vast, unmapped blue of the ocean, and we wonder, is it truly empty? The ocean is the ultimate time capsule. Things don't just die out there, they sink, they adapt. They retreat into the darker, colder zones where our cameras cannot survive. In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration recorded a sound in the South Pacific. It was picked up by autonomous hydrophones thousands of miles apart. It was an ultra-low frequency, high-amplitude underwater sound. They called it the bloop. The audio profile matched that of a living marine animal, but the sheer volume of the sound meant that if it was biological, the creature would have to be several times larger than the blue whale, the largest animal known to have ever lived on Earth. For years, the bloop fueled the fires of the Leviathan myth. Was there a massive, undiscovered apex predator lurking in the deep Pacific? Was it the Kraken? Was it something older? The sound was a reminder of how little we actually know about the acoustic landscape of the abyss. The bloop was eventually attributed to an ice quake, the massive cracking and carving of an Antarctic glacier. The physics of the ocean carried the sound of tearing ice across thousands of miles, mimicking the vocalization of a titan. But the psychological impact of the bloop remains. It proved that we are desperately eager to find the Leviathan. We want the deep ocean to hold monsters. Because a world without monsters is a world that is fully mapped, fully measured, and utterly sterile. We need the mystery of the abyss to remind us that there are still forces on this planet that we cannot control. The icequake was the scientific truth, but the fear it generated was the emotional truth. We know in our bones that the ocean is too big to be empty. We have mapped the surface of Mars and the craters of the Moon with greater resolution than we have mapped the ocean floor. Over 80% of the global ocean remains unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. The Mariana Trench plunges nearly 7 miles into the Earth's crust. If you dropped Mount Everest into it, the peak would still be covered by over a mile of water. Down there, the pressure is over 1,000 times the standard atmospheric pressure at sea level. We send our little robotic probes down, sweeping a flashlight beam through a pitch-black auditorium, and we assume we understand the room. But we don't. We are only seeing what the light touches. The Leviathan does not live in the light. It lives in the 70% of the planet that is perpetually, violently dark. Why do we need the Leviathan? We need it because it humbles us. In an era where humanity has conquered the land, split the atom and digitized the globe, we suffer from a dangerous arrogance. We believe we are the masters of the earth. But the ocean is a massive, silent corrective to human hubris. You cannot pave the ocean. You cannot build a wall across the Atlantic. The sea remains the one true wilderness left on this planet. The myth of the Kraken, the biblical terror of the Leviathan, and the biological reality of the colossal squid all serve the same psychological purpose. They remind us that we are small, fragile, and utterly out of our element. They are the guardians of the planet's final frontier, ensuring that we never forget our place in the food chain. The ocean does not care about our ships. It does not care about our sonar, our submarines, or our myths. It operates on a timeline of billions of years, slowly churning, slowly evolving. The monsters we fear are simply the ocean's way of surviving its own extreme conditions. We are the intruders. We are the aliens, visiting a world that is perfectly content without us. The Leviathan is not a villain. It is an immune response. It is the deep's way of maintaining its sovereignty. As we push further into the abyssal plains to mine its minerals and harvest its depths, we may finally come face to face with the things that Olaus Magnus drew on his maps. And when we do, we will realize that the myths were not exaggerations. They were understatements. The Leviathan still swims in the dark. It is out there, moving through the freezing currents, its eyes perfectly adjusted to the absolute black. The archive has shown us the truth of its existence, from the ink on ancient maps to the scars on the flesh of whales. We have only skimmed the surface of the Aquatic Abyss. What lies deeper still? What waits in the trenches where even the colossal squid fears to go? That is a story for another time. The archive remains open, but for now, we must return to the light. This has been Chapter 2, The Leviathan's Wake. Sleep well, and remember, when you look out at the calm, dark surface of the sea is looking back, and it is so much bigger than you.